All right, I'm sitting here with Shasta County District 4 Supervisor candidate Matt Plummer. Just talking, going to ask him some questions, let him sort of talk about what his plan would be as a supervisor.
Sounds good.
Yeah, maybe you could just give a little rundown of your main thesis for wanting to be a supervisor.
Yeah, so I basically believe that there's enough challenges that we can all agree exist in Shasta County, and opportunities for that matter, that we should focus there and make progress on it.
Yeah.
And that our current leadership has gotten distracted. We're focusing more on cultural war issues than we are on things that actually affect the lives of the people who live here.
Right.
Our roads, for example, score 49 out of 100.
Right.
They were 64 back in 2008, so we've dropped. While Modoc County, for example, which is much smaller than us, has gone in the opposite direction. And so there's a number of things like that. I mean, the fact that it took the city councils from the surrounding cities to come to the Board of Supervisors to get on the agenda talking about opening the third floor of our jail is kind of crazy. And so let's focus on the things that matter, that actually affect the people who live here, and let's make real progress on them. And to do that, we're going to have to work together. Right now, there's so much division, both among the Board of Supervisors, but also the community. And so we have to restore mutual respect. We don't have to agree with each other. In fact, I think we need to learn healthy disagreement of, okay, let's debate ideas and actions, and instead of attacking people, right? Because I think, the best, I train companies on critical thinking. And so the key principle of that is you need to invite opposing viewpoints. You need to look at the weaknesses in your argument. So it's good to have disagreement because that strengthens ideas. But if we can't focus on the substance of it, but we're focused so much on the personalities and the people, we're losing the ability to attack the real things, which, we have one of the highest suicide rates in the state, one of the highest rates of childhood trauma, one of the highest rates of kids growing up without parents present. So we have real challenges here. I think we have a great opportunity to make this a great place to live. I mean, it already is. But we need to address some of these things and turn them in the right direction. It's going to take all of us to work together and to try to really crack the code on some of these tough challenges like crime and homelessness as well. So.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great. So there's, I wanted to ask, what is, you're a member of Bethel Church.
Technically not a member, but it's more of just semantics, but I go to Bethel, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is one of the things, I've lived in this county for 30 years. It's where I grew up, it's my home, and it's the main reason why I'm so involved in all this stuff, because in the last 3 years, I've just seen this group of people come in and trying to, change, and not necessarily Bethel, but Patrick Jones and Chris Kellstrom and all those people that want to switch to hand counting, want to do all these things, which a lot of these things are largely based off of proven disinformation, but there's a relentlessness, to want these things to be true and to happen anyways. It's kind of mind boggling. So one of the things that a lot of people in this town, whether you're left, right, or center, they've kind of united on is, and unfortunately, as a complaint, is the presence of Bethel and the things that have happened, some of the behaviors and things that they've done over the years. And I know, speaking to a lot of people, that if that label is attached to you, there's going to be this sort of negative connotation, and I'm definitely not saying you should renounce Bethel or anything like that. You go wherever you want to go to church. I fully believe in freedom of religion. There's just things, if you were to maybe possibly ease people's minds on, because I can tell you some of the fears people would have if they're associating you with Bethel would be Bethel's monopolization of the housing market in this area. It's been very, very difficult for people, and even myself included. It took me a year to find a studio apartment because everything was pretty much, reserved for Bethel students or owned by Bethel. And is there any way you could possibly help bridge that sort of divide between the rest of the community that may be of a different religion or no religion at all, and then the presence that is Bethel in the community? And what would you possibly be able to say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I would say is that I'm not running to represent Bethel. Okay. Bethel is a big organization, and big organizations in any community come under scrutiny, and they should, right? And the same thing is true of McConnell Foundation, and has been. They've received a lot of attention as well because they're a big player in the town. So I'd say that. The other thing I'd say is that in terms of like who I am and running as a supervisor, I spend a few hours a week at Bethel, but really what I think I bring to the table in terms of a supervisor is being a consultant to nonprofits for a number of years, working with leading nonprofits and figuring out how do you take what's effective,
right,
and grow that. And then now training companies on critical thinking, productivity, efficiency, and people management, which I think our county government needs.
Definitely. Yeah.
And then third was working on 3 statewide campaigns, and so I have a sense of what's happening at the state level and on both sides. And so I'd say first of all, just me as a person, that's how I would portray like why I'm running. I'm not running to represent Bethel, and I don't think that a candidate should run to represent their church. That said, to speak to a few of the specific things, I think everyone should be able to, as you said, believe what they want to believe,
right,
in terms of religious beliefs, and that the government isn't the place to impose religious beliefs.
Right.
And so I would never even think about the idea of like trying to impose a religious belief. I mean, if you want to go to Bethel and believe what they believe, or go to the Stirring, or go to any other church, you can do that, or you don't have to. In terms of the housing market, obviously we have a challenge. I wrote an email about this a few weeks ago, that in Butte County, which has 220,000 people, we have 182, so a little bit bigger than us.
Right.
They issued 5 times the building permits that we did last year. And so why is that happening?
Yeah.
And so when you have a place that increases demand for housing, as Bethel has, and it's not the only factor, but it's been, then you need to respond by increasing the supply of housing. Otherwise, pricing goes up and availability goes down, right?
Right.
And so I think if we have a place that's bringing people here, now there could be fair arguments of like, do we want those people coming here or not, and you could debate that. But if we have a place and multiple things in the community that's bringing people here who want to invest in the community and, at least ideally make the community better, then we shouldn't respond by saying, oh, well, that's bad. We should say, okay, well, how do we grow the supply of housing? How do we make it easier? Why aren't we building, if we wanted to be, at the pace that Butte County is, for an example?
Yeah.
So that would be a specific response, and on the housing piece. And then I think, Bethel gets attention for some beliefs that seem strange to the average person. That's totally fine. What I would say is that, and a reason why I was working for a nonprofit that had nothing to do with any faith, and I, saw that Bethel was trying to contribute to the community, and so there are a number of things, and so that was part of what attracted me to it. Was, okay, they're spending hours of student time cleaning up our trails, right by here. They invested a few years ago to keep the neighborhood policing unit in the Reading Police Department, and so there's a number of things that they're doing now. And so that's actually part of what draws me, is that they're trying to invest in the city. Do they always get it right? Probably not. Does anybody ever always get it right? Probably not. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. One thing I really liked that you said in the video I watched through, you were talking about the last meeting, was, when you said that how you would handle the individual, me obviously, would be to contact me outside of the board chambers and actually talk and see what we can do to get on the same page, and at least find if it had to be a healthy compromise, but to make it so that government can continue forward and meetings don't get disrupted and things like that. And that really stood out to me, because I attempted to challenge Patrick Jones to a debate one-on-one, to actually not have all of the, just even on his own platform, his place where he does his little podcast, to be a moderator or something. And he told KRCR when they approached him about that challenge that he wouldn't give me 2 seconds outside of the board meeting. And I think that is just the absolute opposite mindset that a leader needs to have, even especially towards a constituent who definitely doesn't agree with a lot of things you do. Just locking them out and saying that nothing you say matters. You're the other side. You're Antifa. You're whatever they call me. When I clearly go and I have good valid points, and I think I talk about a lot of issues, and I think this is one of the reasons why they hate me so much, and Patrick hates me so hard, because I go and I call them out on the crap they're pulling all the time, and I think that's upset him. And so you would be willing to, whether it was someone on this side or in the middle, if somebody was clearly, frustrated with a board meeting or, how the outcome of something went, you would be willing to contact that person and allow for that type of discussion to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say two things to that. One is that I think you only have influence where you have relationship. And so sometimes there's this perspective of like, oh, well, the other side, and we do this with the state. Currently, the Board of Supervisors does it with the state. They're like, well, we don't like the state, and so we're not going to have any relationship with them. We're going to put them at arm's distance. And I'm like, you just lost all influence with the state.
Yeah.
And now the state's going to look to punish us as a county.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to develop relationship. It doesn't mean we have to agree or even compromise necessarily, but we have to have relationship, because that's how you actually get to understand the person. You build a mutual level of trust where you can have those hard conversations, and you can say, yeah, we disagree about that, but I'm going to tell you the truth anyway.
Right.
And okay, we don't necessarily agree on the end point, but we can trust the process. So I'd say, that's a key thing, is we have to, if we want to have influence on the things that happen in our community, we have to have relationships with people, and even people we disagree with. I said, I think Shasta Scout published an interview I did with them, and in there I think I said something like I would talk to anybody. And so the Fountain Wind Project, people reached out to me and they said, we saw that you said you would talk to anybody, which, they're not very popular, at least, on the surface in the county. And so I met with them and talked to them, and, I don't necessarily agree with the project. I'm not saying I disagree with it. I'm just saying, I wanted to hear their side.
Still have the conversation.
I want to hear. I want to have the conversation and understand it. And that's the other thing. When you teach critical thinking, it's not enough to accept opposing opinions. You actually have to seek them out. Mm-hmm. So if I have an idea and I'm on this side of the perspective on this idea, and I know that there's another perspective that's totally different, it's not enough for me just to be like, oh yeah, I'm open to other ideas. I actually have to go seek that out, because as I seek out that opposing viewpoint, that will actually make my idea stronger, or it will show me that this idea isn't good.
Right.
And so that's a key principle of how we get to good ideas, is we actually proactively seek out opposing viewpoints. And so, I think, if the board disagrees with you on something, they should seek you out and be like, well, why do you think that? Okay. Right. Are we missing something? Or maybe, no, we hear your perspective and we're like, no, they don't think they're missing something, but at least they've caught some, because the worst thing, and we do this all the time in policy, we put a policy out there and then it has dramatic unintended consequences. Mm-hmm. And so we thought we were doing good, we thought we were helping, but actually we were hurting the people that we intended to help. And it's because we didn't think about all the different ways that that policy would influence and affect the community. And it's because we're trying to amass political power rather than trying to get to good ideas.
Right. Yep. So a lot of what this current board majority seems to be wanting to do and doing is voting to pass things that are extremely divisive, based off of their own personal ideologies or beliefs. For example, trying to get rid of our electronic voting machines and have them replaced with a fully hand counted system, even though the Deputy Secretary of State, the voting registrar, has explained endlessly why these are bad ideas, and them trying to get rid of the Dominion machines, even though they were voted in with the Dominion machines, just doesn't make sense to a lot of people, and it just feels like it's like a part of a larger plan that is part of something that's bigger than Shasta County. I want to ask, how would you handle votes brought to the board, agenda items that could very potentially be extremely divisive, and so divisive to the point that it may not even be worth it to do it, just due to the level of divisiveness that it will create?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is, and this has kind of been a hallmark of my campaign, is let's focus on the challenges we can all agree exist. Right. And the reason I say that, especially now, is because I don't think we actually have, we don't have the goodwill as a community. We don't know how to work together as a board. And as a broader community, there's a whole issue with nonprofits versus the county right now. So we don't have that groundwork built to actually take on divisive issues right now, right? To do them successfully. So we need to focus on things that we can all be like, oh yeah, we all agree that that's a problem. Let's go focus on it. Build a track record of working together, learn how to do that again, and then we can turn to some of the more divisive issues. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that the process matters. So even if I agree with the board on as I do, on some of the kind of endpoints of their decisions, many times the process is a complete disaster. And so, and that's particularly true when you're talking about something that's really divisive. You want people to trust the process even if they disagree with the end decision. And right now there isn't that happening in terms of things like lack of communication and working together with staff and other elected officials.
Right.
I mean, the agreement with the tribe, whether or not, and I think we could debate whether that was a good agreement or not, and I think you could end up on either side of that, but the way it was done was not good at all.
Right.
And so you have to do the process in a way that invites input, that looks at the data and evidence. And so on elections, for example, on elections, for example, in my mind, I think we can agree on 4 things about elections. We want the vote to be accurate, secure, cost effective, and time efficient.
Yes.
And so if we can all agree on, so let's look for the common ground. Okay, we all want our election system to achieve those 4 metrics, right?
Right.
So then we should say, well, let's come up with a way to actually assess our current election system and alternatives that are out there. And let's go through a process. And this is what I used to do in terms of presenting options to nonprofits of how they could grow. It'd be like, okay, you have 3 options.
Right.
Now let's score them on these criteria, and we could do the same on those 4 criteria. And then, that would garner a lot of debate, right?
Right.
Like, and people would come on different sides, but at least we're having the conversation at the level of specifics and data and evidence versus at this conversation of like Mike Lindell said this and like so and so said that, right? Which isn't helping us at all.
Right.
So let's get down to the specifics. Let's create a process that people can trust. And then let's have debates about like the actual data. Well, you're saying this data, I don't believe that. Like, here's another data point. Okay, well, let's look at them. Where do they come from? What was the sample size? Those types of things, and we could hash it out. And so, I think that's what should have been done. And so if the board wanted to prove that the current system wasn't sufficient, then they should have said, here's how we're going to assess our election system and whether it's a good system or not. And then we're going to present the data and the evidence, and we're going to look at counter data and evidence, and we're going to say, oh no, well, we think this outweighs it, if they do. And then people could be like, okay, I don't agree, but that process seems pretty rigorous to me.
Right.
And that's not what's happening right now.
Right. So I guess my last question, I don't want to take too much of your time.
Yeah.
The turnover of county employees since this board majority has been the majority, firing the county health officer because of upholding state COVID mandates, going through so many county councils in the last 2 years, among many other people that have just either up and quit, been fired, whatever.
Yeah.
The turnover rate is huge. What would you do to not only stop that from happening, but to entice more educated, more intelligent, qualified people to want to come to the county to actually work for the county? Because right now, I think a lot of people they're just like, screw that. I'm not going to go, jump in that mud pit. How would you get more of those qualified county people into the county?
Yeah, so when I was working at this nonprofit, the way it would work is that, as a manager, you'd get to work on a project for 3 to 6 months, and you'd work with a team, and then that team would roll over, and you might get a totally different team.
Right.
And the staff, could pick which projects they wanted to go on to some extent, right? So what happens, right? The managers that people like working for, if you can become that, then you get all the best staff. So you get the best teams, and so then you work on the best projects, and you deliver the best work, and you get, move up, and you have the most impact.
Right.
And so a lot of the managers didn't realize that. They just focused on delivering great client work, which makes sense, right? It's just do your work great. It's like, no, actually, if I invest in the people, then I will get the best teams, and then because here's the thing, no one person can accomplish anything that is of significance at the county level, right?
Right.
And so you need people to do it. And this is sometimes I think the board forgets this, like you need the county to be a very well-run, effective organization in order for it to actually achieve the things that we want it to achieve.
Right.
And so that means that you have to invest in them so that they feel like, 1, I'm doing something that's important, 2, I'm appreciated, and 3, I have the, what's called in kind of people management space, psychological safety to present ideas, to take risks. Because the reality is what we've been doing over the last, 10, 20 years hasn't been working. Like, it's not like this new board has created they've created some problems, but there's a lot of problems that existed.
A lot of pre-existing problems that they've just not addressed
right.
Still. Yeah.
And so what we have been doing hasn't been working. And so we need new ideas. We need new ways of collaborating. And right now our staff from what I hear, feel afraid to actually, come forth and put their neck out there because they're worried about retaliation.
Right.
And you can't have a workplace culture where that's
No,
happening.
it seems like an extremely hostile work environment working in that building, in the county building, and that's what I've gotten from a lot of people who do work in that building. Even supervisors, the supervisor staff, the clerk staff. It's been very, very contentious and very not a place people want to go to work at. It's not a healthy environment for people to actually get work done.
And it's because I think, there's a short-sighted strategy, which is, well, if we disagree with someone in county staff or county elected official, and we want them to change their opinion, or we want to get through what we want even if they disagree, then we'll use kind of public humiliation to make them look bad, so that then, public support swings on our side. And it's like, that might be successful in that moment, but long term it's a horrible strategy,
right,
because it alienates them and turns them away. We have to try to protect the people that work for us. I mean, the thing of a manager is, if someone on your team screws up, you take the fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't look to blame someone else, because that then alienates your team member, and you can't hope to have them working under you, because they have to trust you and respect you, right, if they're going to be. And that's the thing, with the jail, right? Staffing the third floor of the jail. One of the things I've said, and I have to figure out kind of the legalities of this, but I would plan, if elected, to go to the jail. I don't know the right frequency right now, but I'm thinking around once a week, if not a little more, and just show up there and be like, hey, thanks for what you're doing. Appreciate you guys being here. Because we know that, the main reason that we're hiring people and then they leave from the jail, right, so we can't staff it, is that the work environment. And some of that's the physical structure itself. Right. But part of it is, how do we compensate? People are able to endure a lot of hard,
it's a very depressing place.
It is,
My fiance is a criminal defense attorney, and so she spends a lot of time in the jail visiting with her clients and stuff.
Okay.
So she's like, yeah, that's a depressing place to work, and to not feel like you have support from the leadership of your county while doing that very difficult to do and depressing job probably weighs down on people. And I like that, trying to go and see what's going on, fix potential workplace issues or things that shouldn't be happening, and make it a viable place to work, a place that actually pays the people enough who are working there to do that job that most people probably don't want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And it was my first job out of school. I joined this industrial supply distributor. So think of Amazon, but for nuts and bolts and cranes and that type of thing. Okay. So I'm working out in the warehouse. I'm a supervisor in the assembly department, and the Great Recession had just happened, so we were really short-staffed, and so the staff was working like crazy, just getting overrun by orders constantly, and they had lost a lot of trust in management. And so one day I send the crew to break, and there's still a few packages left, and so I'm like, I'm just going to take care of this for them, show that I'm willing to get my hands dirty here.
Right.
So as I'm doing that, the head of the branch, it's like a 500-person branch, comes up to me and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just getting these last things out for the guys, getting it."
Right.
And he's like, "Don't let me ever see you do that again."
Right.
And I was like, in that moment, I was like, that's exactly what's wrong with this place.
Right. Yeah, a true leader leads from the front, not from the back with a whip. You know?
Yeah.
So I like that. Is there anything you want to, say where people can go to support your campaign or find out more about you or anything?
Yes, you can visit mattplummer.com, Plumm, not the plumber that fixes toilets, and we actually have a listening tour up there right now. We want to hear your perspective on what's going on, what issues you feel like the county should address. So,
cool.
If you want to check that out, and then on Instagram and social media or Facebook as well. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, man. I really, really appreciate this. I can't wait to show people this and get more of you out there so that people can see that, hey, we may have a viable, we may have a there's light at the end of the tunnel here. So that's excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good talking with you.
Yeah.